Hi, I'm John Papola, and you're listening to the Emergent Order Podcast. On this episode of the Emergent Order Podcast, I interview Lou Perez, the head writer and producer of We the Internet TV, which is a YouTube channel dedicated to bringing classical liberal and sort of free market-oriented ideas to life through comedy sketches and monologues and a whole range of interesting video content. It's always exciting for me to talk to somebody like Lou, who's proven to be really prolific creatively. It's very difficult to do that and sustain it over time. And that's exactly what Lou has done with We the Internet. Like our prior conversation with my friend Andrew Heaton, Lou and I talk about the challenges of being funny with controversial issues in our day today, but really hone in on the craft and how you get projects made and what it looks like to translate ideas into finished work. It's what we do at Emergent Order, and it's always fun to hear someone else's experience and perspective on it. So I hope you enjoy. Lou Perez. I can't remember which of your videos was the first I'd seen, but when I saw it, whichever one it was, I remember being struck by this is maybe the second person I've encountered who can take classical liberal ideas and make them funny.
Well, thank you, man. There's only two of us. If there's any more, we end up just getting rid of them.
Yes, no, we have to kill them off. We might be against zero-sum games in society as a whole, but in the world of classical liberal comedy, it is a zero-sum game.
Mm-hmm.
There's a Highlander rule when it comes to making capitalism funny. So how did you first get into comedy? Because I feel like you know that's the first one of the great things about I think like you as a storyteller is you put the storytelling in the comedy first. And so like I guess how did you get into comedy? Where did comedy start for you?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. It's a really kind thing of you to say. I think the first time that I got into, I was always like a class clown, but a class clown who was also really good in school. So it's sort of like you can mess around if you're getting good grades, and there was never like a point where they're like, you gotta tone it down because you're not going to be going places. So I had that. I was very fortunate to be to doing well academically, where I was able to get through some of this stuff. And in high school, I had a really wonderful teacher. I went to St. Mary's High School in Manhasset, and I had an English teacher named Brother Jeffrey Pedersen, who was not only my English teacher, he was also he was in charge, I guess, of the school newspaper. And I ended up being a columnist for the school newspaper, and they would let me write satirical pieces. So here I was.
Let me just make sure this is a Catholic school.
A Catholic school, yeah. So,
okay.
So you have to, I mean, I couldn't be too bold or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I remember writing a short story called like The Greatest Cockfighter in the World. And it was a literal like anthropomorphized rooster that was a cockfighter. And it was obviously my way to slip in the word cock in a publication that was it. Yeah, the imprint of this Catholic high school. But I had never done like a school play. I think I was in one school play where I was man number 8 who just like helped move something across the stage. And it wasn't until college where I got in. I went to NYU, and I got into improv. And from improv, that went to sketch. And our sketch group ended up performing at the UCB Theater. And it was there where I was like, wow, I'm really getting into this and I want to do more of it. But all of the, ideology or political stuff didn't come until much later. So I already had like a pretty solid foundation of, is this funny? And if it's not funny, how do we make it funny? And also having the experience of performing in front of a live audience who doesn't lie to you. So, you could be in your room, with these fantasies that you're going to go out there and kill, but if they're not laughing in real life, you got to make some changes.
Yeah. I've never done stand up. So, the closest I've ever come is just public speaking, and it's such a different thing to be in front of an audience and to have to. There's an energetic feedback loop that's in real time. And it's really, it's one, I've given a bunch of public speak talks. And so anytime I can get anyone to laugh at all, it's usually through just self-deprecation or making incredibly nerdy inside jokes. It's like the most important part of the moment. Like, I got them to laugh. Like, I don't care what else happened.
I lost the debate, but man, I got that laugh. I killed with the third row. What was your peak comedic moment before you started to get into this more philosophical work that's become part of what you do now? Yeah, I think I have a duo called Greg and Lou. The other guy's name is Greg, obviously. His name's Greg Burke, and we started performing together in college at NYU. And we were in such a large group. It was called the Hammer Cats. So there was like 15 of us, competing for stage time, that everyone just kind of started breaking off into their little groups, the side projects, like, Genesis, so Phil Collins went off to do his thing, Mike Rutherford, Mike and the Mechanics. Oh my God, I didn't think that was gonna, why would I bring that up? Why would I would purposefully just bring up Genesis.
Genesis is always there below the surface, so it's just made right. you just made the subtext text.
Bubbling, baby. So we started doing our stuff as a duo, and we started making videos pretty early on when YouTube came around, and for people who are just who have grown up with YouTube, it didn't always exist, and it was a really novel thing that you could make stuff and put it out there. And we got in at a time where you could literally just put like comedy video and our stuff would pop up in the search engine,
Yeah.
So I think
that was back when they had those, because when the first rap video came out, they had these like trending pages that were sort of on the homepage and I think it still exists, but it's so buried now. But it used to be like top video in comedy or top video in education. And if you got on those, it would help drive discovery of your stuff.
Yeah, big time. And so I think we hit our peak with a video called Wolverine's Claws Suck. And it's still available on YouTube. And it's about two guys who go to a doctor and they want to get mutant powers, but they only have enough money to get one mutant power. So with Wolverine, it's either the mutant healing or the claws. So they make the big mistake of getting the claws. And it's a very painful looking video, and that blew up. And I think currently now it has over 19 million views on YouTube alone. A couple of years ago when Logan came out, one of the coolest things was we were contacted by Alamo Drafthouse. So at the Alamo Drafthouse, at this theater chain, they will often play videos and that sort of link up with the theme of the feature. And it's a Logan movie. It's about Wolverine. So they asked to play ours. So I got to watch this video that we had made like 10 years before up on the big screen. So that, you know what, I could die a happy man if that's my peak, that sounds pretty good. Even though it's, the video has been demonetized, I think like 3 years ago, so it's not making any money. But
no, our gravestones can be together, like made Hayek rap video on my gravestone, which I know is what it will be. I already know. I actually had it made a couple of years back, so I'm ready for that. And yours can be Wolverine's claws suck, and that's that.
If I'm cremated, maybe they could just put me over your grave or something like that. We could that would be a collaboration.
Yeah. And then a kind of canceled like stamp with also featuring Lou Perez.
Exactly.
So when you were at NYU's, were you studying? Well, what was your major that you were doing improv while you were at school?
Yeah, I was an English major for the first year, and I wanted to be a poet. right? Because that's what you do when you go to an expensive college.
Yeah.
You know, you want to be a poet. I'm the son of a butcher who didn't graduate high school, and my mother, who did graduate high school, she's also a graduate of is it cosmetology school? Is that what they call it? She's a hairdresser, right? So the son of a butcher and a hairdresser wants to go to NYU on a part, you know, I had a little bit of a scholarship there and to study poetry. And I had a class, I had a course with a professor, and I was telling him like all the things that I wanted to do. And he said, "Oh, you sound like a Gallatin kid." And Gallatin is a school in NYU for individualized study, which is, you know, you make up what you want to do. So, you know, so I was on that poetry path.
Wrong to say, is this the short bus section of the school?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
We can't fit you into any of the things that most people want. So we'll let you play with puppies and cartoon characters.
You know, I think there actually would have been a lot more money in playing with puppies than what I was after. But I went from School of Arts and Science to this individualized study, and I think that, you know, that probably opened me up to other possibilities. I had always wanted to try doing improv because I liked, you know, messing around with my friends and that sort of thing. So yeah, I never thought like, oh, hey, maybe that actually was like a kind of a direct link where it's sort of like, let me just open up the possibilities.
Was there, did you ever come across Billy and Adam when you were in UCB? The guys that we cast for Keynes and Hayek? Because I know they were also, I think they were part of Upright Citizens Brigade. When I was at Spike, we worked with a bunch of different UCB folks, and it was always a great source of like comedic talent. So yeah, they were NYU kids. They had a group called, I think it was Harvard Sailing Team. Yep, Harvard Sailing Team.
Yeah, so there were shows, I think, where Hammercats and Harvard Sailing Team were on the same show at the UCB, and the way the UCB used to do it, which was really great, was they would pair up two shows. So it'd be like $5 or $10 to see two different groups, and it's great because if you're a group that might not have, you know, that big of an audience, local audience, maybe the group that you're paired up with would have that audience. So it's funny, I didn't meet them at NYU, but I did meet them at the UCB theater.
What so Andrew Heaton had said that improv and stand-up tend to attract two very different sort of personality types. He said like which made a lot of sense to me. Like improv groups in general, they tend to be the empaths, more sensitive, maybe a little more prone towards political correctness because of that sensitivity, because of that sort of like embody kind of actor-like quality. Whereas stand-up tends to be way more iconoclastic, you know, way more cut against the grain, knock people off their comfort zone. Does that jibe with your experience?
Oh yeah. I mean, in improv, you have warm-ups, right? You do these things to warm up, like whether it's counting down like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, you know, blah, 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 you know, or, you know, zip, zap, zop and all that, which sounds completely insane if no one's ever done improv before, but it's a communal thing. You know, you're part of a collective. You're supposed to help a scene. That might mean that you sacrifice yourself in the scene. Like you don't necessarily have to be the funniest to make sure that a scene, you know, works. And it's very different from stand-up comedy. So I didn't start doing stand-up until I think it was like maybe 27, 28 years old. So I had all this time performing in improv or sketch. So when I went to do stand-up, especially when I started hosting my own show, I wasn't the host who's like, oh yeah, man, this sucks. Like, why are we here? What are we doing here? I was like, no, this is like a show. Like we have to, you know, try to like, you know, at least fake that you're having a good time here. But the energies are just so, you know, just so different. I think it's naturally going to be that way because of just the nature of what the genres call for.
So you start to get where do you start getting interested in the philosophical matters? Where does that kick in? If you didn't have that even into college, that's pretty surprising for me to hear. Like, I was super politically oriented, even like as a kid, God knows why. And then I kind of set that aside for over a decade when I was working at MTV and Nickelodeon, and I was like, I'm going to focus on my craft. That's just personal beliefs and stuff, and really doesn't have anything to do with making a rocket power movie trailer. And so, and then those worlds collided. But it sounds like you came to that late. So what was there, like an inciting incident? Was there something that, got you interested in ideas?
Well, I think when it really hit for me was I was in grad school, because when you go to get like basically an English major and you don't know what to do after that, you go to grad school, continue doing that.
Right. I can't find a job, so I should not try.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, exactly.
I should spend more money on it.
Yeah. Why? How can I get a full-time job when there might be an audition somewhere down the line at some point? I want to talk to that kid. I want to go back in time and talk to that kid. One of these days, if we ever,
Don't pull on that string. The whole fabric will come undone.
Right now, we just fade out right now.
Yeah, it'll be a Back to the Future, Polaroid vanishing sequence is going to happen.
Right.
Two references that no kid would even understand.
No, not at all. That Polaroid is just the name of a child now. Like it doesn't have any of its old meaning.
Yes.
But yeah, when it comes to that stuff, I think one of the ways that I got in there was through sort of like the skeptics movement. So I remember coming across Sam Harris at one time, and I remember particularly when it comes to religion stuff. And at the time, I was like, wow, this guy's saying so much of what I've been thinking, and he's doing it so eloquently. So sort of like Sam Harris led me to Christopher Hitchens, but then within that is also Penn Jillette. And I was watching Penn Jillette's Penn and Teller's Bullshit, right? So it was all that, like sort of being a skeptic, questioning things, trying to use reason. And when I was in graduate school, I was so lucky to be in the program with a woman by the name of Carla Herlica. And for those who might be familiar, like with the Free State Project, Carla was a big presence in that movement. And we went on a writer's retreat to Archer City, Texas, where is his name Robert McMurtry, the author of Lonesome Dove and Brokeback Mountain, lives there. It's literally a one streetlight town, and I think I might have his name. I think it's McMurtry. My apologies if I get it wrong, just in case he sees this. And Carla is a libertarian anarchist, at the time, and me and other members of the program we're all hanging out in the living room, and politics come up, and people start talking about politics and ideas, and I'm kind of hanging back, and they're all going after Carla. They're all asking these pointed questions that Carla has to defend, right? Like,
who will build the roads, Carla?
Exactly. All that stuff that
who will be able to pour concrete, Carla?
Yeah, we're able to, all that stuff that we hear all the time. So some of the questions she has answers to, then other questions she doesn't, and she says, I don't know how that's going to work, but I would really like to find a way to do that without initiating force. No, and I'd never heard about non-aggression principle or anything like that. And I was really just blown away by, like, here's a person who's standing up for herself in the middle of this, an angry bunch of MFAers. And that helped kind of get me down bring me down that road. And I think, I found Reason Magazine and Cato and that sort of thing. And I think I'm very different. In many ways, I'm much different than I was when I was 25 years old. But it's definitely played a huge role in my life and how I'm going about it.
How old were you when you had that experience? Like when you're sitting in the room watching Carla get grilled?
Yeah, I wonder if I was I 26 or 27? If I go back, I'm really bad with time. I'm sort of a walking William Faulkner, where just history is just there. It's always with me. I'm always a 6-year-old boy and a 12-year-old.
Yeah, you're Dr. Manhattan. You're experiencing all of reality simultaneously.
Exactly. Yeah, so I was in my my mid 20s.
Okay.
And I was thinking about it actually the other day, because there was a time where, as skeptical as I thought I was, I was there was a time where if I read something that was in print, in particular, I'd be like, oh wow, that must be how it is. And then I would read something that counters it, and I'm like, oh, but that must be how it is. And I was very gullible, and also I couldn't believe that people would actively lie. Like, why would you lie in a book? Like, why would you spend 300 pages lying to people? I know it's really pathetic. It's really, really pathetic. But I had an experience where I read the Shock Doctrine.
It's not a lie if you believe it yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So I read the Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein, and after reading
that's a great exercise in 500 pages of dishonesty.
Yeah. So I read that and I hated Milton Friedman. How can you not hate Milton Friedman? This monster. He's a monster. And I
he
guess
literally raised Augusto Pinochet from the moment he was born.
Exactly. He was suckling, Pinochet on his free market teat. And I read that and I was so angry. Blah blah blah. And then I searched YouTube, and there was a really good response from Johan Norberg.
Oh, I remember that video.
The Shock Doctrine. It was like, he was interviewed by Michael Moynihan, and it was like, oh my God, he just in 10 minutes, he cut through her argument, and did it so well. So sort of all that stuff together,
And just for the viewer who hasn't come across that book and thinks we're just skewering her thesis, remind me now. Her thesis is basically that the only way that free market oriented policies come about is in the sort of stammering aftermath of some kind of cataclysmic shock. Yeah. And that's when all the Chicago boys rush in and push through some free market program, because we know that that's what happens, that when there's a crazy public nightmare event like a pandemic, you get massive deregulation.
Right.
And I think one of the most, if I remember from that Norberg interview, he points out that there's been far more movements towards freer market, more pro-capitalism policies from advanced democracies like the Scandinavian countries post-1980s. Mm-hmm. Then there have been this shock doctrine theory. It's like, okay, did the COVID-19 pandemic make America more free market? Like, governors telling you to stay in your house, is that Milton Friedmanite? Is that the Milton? I forgot. I don't know where lockdowns were, what page lockdowns were in Capitalism and Freedom by Milton Friedman, but I guess they're in there somewhere.
Yeah, and it's also making. I think that had a big impact on me, with the idea that definitions matter, and I want to make sure that when I'm having a conversation with somebody that we're talking about the same thing. So it's like, well, when I talk about the free market, I mean one thing. What do you mean when you talk about the free market? Because I don't like occupational licensing laws. Like, what do you mean by the free market? Are you talking about mercantilism? Like, and I think that's really important, especially for guys like us, kind of in the minority, in order to have these conversations. It's like, let's be as specific as we can be, and actually get results from that, rather than just sort of dancing around these odd definitions that people put on words.
So what is your definition of capitalism? Let's start there.
I guess what I see as capitalism is a system of property rights and voluntary exchange of goods and services. I'm sure there's a more, a better definition there, but that's always how I've seen it.
So give me an example of, an experience where that was the first point of like reorientation in a conversation with somebody who's like, you're out with friends, it's a mixed group, you the token libertarian in the group become the subject of the conversation. And so you're put in that position that Carla was in. It's like, okay, Lou, so like, you're Mr. Capitalism, comedy capitalism guy. Where do you start? Like, how do you lay the groundwork for that conversation to be productive, to be something that you can find some shared humanity, find some common ground, and then debate the differences?
Yeah, there was an incident, I guess, that happened years ago that I was when I lived in Los Angeles, I was staying with a friend at the time. I was renting a room in his house, and we had other sort of like writers, comedians over, and they were talking about just like business in general. And what I'm always interested in is sort of what sort of firsthand experience do you have in something? Because I'm very very willing to admit that if I don't have firsthand experience in something. So, for example, I don't run a business, right? But my father is a butcher, and we have a family business. So there are certain realities that we face running a business that a lot of people who've never run a business before don't know. So in this conversation at the time, there was a lot of words being thrown around like greed, greedy people and all that. And when I was talking, to them, I was trying to get to, well, what are some other factors that are just there in business that you have to deal with before greed even comes into the picture? Overhead, what kind of overhead? Is it rent? Is it electricity? Is it buying the products? Is it how expensive is it to actually have workers, right? And it's like that, whether you're the greediest person in the world or the most altruistic person in the world, those are realities that you have to contend with. So I try to not, I try not to be a dick, but it's like, hey, there might be things here that you're not seeing, that you're not, that you don't know about, that might change the way you're looking at this whole dynamic.
So I want to hear about what drives the styles that you pursue on your different shows on We the Internet. So start with sort of how you got involved with MPI and with this YouTube channel that you've really spearheaded. And I want to just hear the origin. Like, how does it work? Like, there's so much great content. You've been very prolific at it. And what was the starting point, and how have you kind of sustained so many different forms and formats?
Thanks. Yes. So some years back, I was lucky enough to go to some friends of mine, Ted and Courtney Balaker. They made the awesome documentary "Can We Take a Joke?" and the movie Little Pink House. So if any of your listeners haven't seen those, please check those out. I think they're available on Amazon. So when I was heading out to LA to go move there, one of the great things about social media is that you have the opportunity to connect with people whose work you've enjoyed before. And Ted had produced a lot of stuff for Reason TV. So I hit him up and said, hey, I'm moving out to LA. I'd love to, grab a drink with you or something like that. And they're very friendly people. And I got to meet up with them. And they invited me to this one day seminar about film distribution. And I wasn't at a point where I had a film or anything like that, but I think there was lunch provided, and that's And anytime lunch is provided, I'll go anywhere. You know, if
Club
there's
sandwiches, Lou's
hell
like,
yeah,
I'm in.
I'm in, man. If I'm going keto, I'll just take the bread off, bro. Just eat whatever's in the middle of it. So I went to so I went to this event, and I met Lana Link, who works for MPI, and Lana was doing. She was like a kind of like talent scouting in a way, and they introduced me to her and said, "Hey, Lou does sketch comedy," and she said, "Oh, it's great. We're looking to do sketch comedy that also involves like politics and culture." And at the time, I'd never combined these two things. I really just kept these things separate. And at the time, I wasn't even one of those people that was so vocal on like Facebook or anything like that with my opinions that I actually maintained, I think, more friendships at the time.
As anyone that knows me on Facebook knows, the platforms promote. They don't bring out your best self. It's not like come to Facebook or Twitter where you can be warm and inviting to people that differ from you. It's more like come and become a firebrand or get the hell out of here if you're not screaming.
Yeah, exactly. It would be the equivalent of like Instagram. If every time you posted a picture on Instagram where you had abs, Instagram just like erased your abs and just gave you a pot belly. So it's like you could never be your best self like on this thing.
It's like it's like visiting the Costanza's house every time. It's like, let me check. It's like, now I've got Jerry Stiller screaming in my face, and the only way I can be heard is if I scream back.
Right. So I never combined. I never combined the two things. But when given the opportunity to pitch ideas to WTI, and I didn't have anything to do with the founding of it, and at the time there were a lot of different voices actually, all working on it. So I pitched my own ideas, and it was a lot of fun to challenge myself to see like, how can you take something that is controversial and make it funny and perhaps thought provoking. So one of the first videos I made was that I pitched was a PR guy meets up with basically a SWAT team, and he has to explain to him like, we love SWAT, we love the police, but if you guys want the people to stay on your side, don't shoot the dog. Like, stop shooting dogs on all of your raids. And it's like, because people don't care about the constitutional, aspects of it, any of the Bill of Rights. They just care about, you just shot a really cute Yorkie, So it was like, oh, cool. How can I take those ideas and work it together? And so I pitched, I think it was 5 ideas at the start. I was given a little bit of a budget, and it turns out that I'd gone over budget and had started taking money out of my own account to pay for some of these productions, because I really saw that there was great potential here, and I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to show that I can produce and I could do this. And little by little, I worked my way up to a head writer position, and then to a producer position. And it's something I didn't see myself going that route ever. I was, out of the duo of Greg and Lou, I'm more of the, the lazy one. I'm not the guy who edits. I'm not the guy who directs. I'm not the guy who's like, hey, we really need some more rewrites. I'm sort of the guy where, yeah, I got ideas and stuff like that, and I'll do my part. So this opportunity really brought that out of me, that ambition, and also a work ethic that I guess hadn't been there in a while. And so it's been a few years of that, and here we are.
So I remember that the SWAT team video, and in an act of incredible woven crossover, Billy Scafuri, Keynes, is in that video. I remember.
He plays a character. Yeah, his nickname is Silver Surfer. He chose a cool nickname.
I remember I remember at the time I saw it and I was like, oh, this is a great video. But then I was also like, well, I know Billy's not like a libertarian. So what is he thinking? Like, these libertarians keep hiring me to do weird comedic role.
Well, that's that's the thing too about working in this space with politics, and a big reason why if viewers were to sort of go back to earlier WTI stuff from say 3 or 4 years ago, they might not see me in it as much as they do now over the past couple of years, because there was that hesitation there of working with people where it's like, oh man, is this actor going to be comfortable with this subject matter? You know, we never think about it in terms of like a movie where someone plays a murderer or something like that. Would they be comfortable playing a murderer? But something where it's like, would this actor feel comfortable like taking a different stance on guns or tax policy? You know, and it got to the point where, you know, when you're creating stuff, you don't want that anxiety there of like, oh, is so-and-so going to like it, especially if you believe in it so much, where, finally I was just like, look, I'm a performer. If this thing is too controversial, I'll just do it. I'll be the guy. I'll be the face of it. But yeah, I do wonder, you know, there are some people where we have a video called Burglars for Gun Control. And it's right there, man. That's what the title is. And
then you've got a good concept, you know, the idea of the log line. People like to trash like the simplification process, like, oh, you're just dumbing down my complex idea. But if you can't sell it in a line, there really is probably something missing. There's something that isn't there yet.
Yeah, and the actors that we had in it were fantastic. They're all friends of mine. Scott Blair, he was in a comedy group called Magic Hugs. That he has some of his sketch comedy like I go back to multiple times a year because he's so funny. He's hilarious, and he played a major role in that video that blew up. That was blowing up on the Blaze network, you know, was sharing this, and a lot of, you know, right-wing pro-gun people were sharing it. And it's one of those things where I'm like, I loved working on it with him, but man, I really hope that this doesn't hurt him down the road. Because I'm not thinking, I mean, you know, we're not necessarily thinking how many steps ahead, you know, we're not thinking like all the years down the road, like, man, is he going to lose out on something because he was in one of my silly videos? I hope that's not the case.
I mean, it has gotten where things are at now for anyone who's in like the public eye is weird. It never would have, you know, if everybody I worked with at Spike TV would surely be canceled if our writers' rooms were accessible through a Google Doc on Twitter. Like, there's no world in which any of that would have survived. Mm-hmm. And have you seen that impact your collaborations as far as just like what can be, how open you can be in a creative process? You know, if you're not working with people who are like, you know, you really trusted, where you feel like you can crack jokes and they're not gonna take offense. I mean, how has that sort of cancel woke culture impacted your creative process?
Yeah, so I think one, well, and I think in any creative capacity, especially when you're working with writers, it's so tough to find people who are really good writers that you could, you know, rely on. And, you know, you produce a ton of stuff too. So it's like when you find someone whose writing you love, it's like, oh, this is the best thing ever. And sort of what's happened with We the Internet over the years is that the collaborations that I've made have been with, you know, relatively, you know, small, like handful of writers that I trust, who enjoy working on the stuff that we're working on, who, you know, can put up with me, which is fantastic. And so with these discussions that we have, it's coming from a place of we trust each other, and we're also not looking for ways of, ooh, I'm going to I wonder if I could use this against this person down the road. Which it almost feels like some of the garbage that I see on Twitter. It's like people are bringing up stuff that happened in conversation or text messages or private messages from years ago as a way to taking down someone now, that I just think it's so gross.
So what in the past year, what's been your favorite show or format or what have you done in the past year that you would say is just like really popped, really worked, and why?
Well, I think the tough thing is that sometimes you think what works so well for you doesn't necessarily work for view counts,
Right, sure.
So that's been
this is just the Lou. It doesn't need to be highest view count. It's like it's
right.
Just the Lou meter.
The Lou meter. We released something recently called "Supervillains Are Bad at Business," and it was written by Brandon Basham, who's one of the guys who I collaborate with. One of the guys who I collaborate with the most, and it was based on sort of what I call a Lou Perez dream, where it's a parody of Captain Planet, and I just remember thinking, like, man, these Captain Planet supervillains are cartoonish, but cartoonish beyond them being cartoons, where it's like none of the stuff they're doing seems to make any business sense whatsoever. Like they're burning a lot of money, like burning you're just gonna pollute water, like that's your thing, man. Like how do you monetize that? So
I've got all this leftover aluminum. What should I do with it? We should feed it to seals.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You don't think we should melt it down to make more of the thing we make? No,
Yeah.
Feed it to seals.
Feed it to seals. That's what we're gonna do. So this was a fun collaboration where we're able to take that idea. Brandon did an amazing job scripting it. We worked with Tim Ingle on animation. Tim was able to animate it. I was able to bring in my good friend Scott Hampton to do the music on it, and then work with voiceover artists. So it was one of these things where it's like, what I'm proud of it is it's this tiny idea that I had, just one little observation that can turn into a 6-minute animated thing. So I'm hoping that one day it blows up and people are just loving it and like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. But being able to say that I made something like that there's a reward there in itself.
I had the same, years and years ago, early in the life of Emergent Order, I wrote this video with Max Borders that it was right in my wheelhouse, having spent years at Nickelodeon, called the Kronies, where it was a 90s send up to the old toy commercials based on a cartoon, and it was very similar type of thing. And I was so proud of it. I was like, this is gonna have more views than the Keynes versus Hayek videos. And it did get a little bit of earned media, like news coverage sort of, but it didn't get the takeoff that I would have thought it would have gotten. And it's so weird what clicks and what doesn't click. It's have you noticed trends in terms of is there things that you've seen? Because I think we've always been, as a company, more sporadic. Sometimes we'll work on a feature film and it'll take 3 years. Sometimes we'll work on a short piece, but we're not sort of constantly feeding our YouTube channel with new content. This podcast exists, frankly, because it's a way of putting ideas out there on a more regular basis than like our video production tends to. What patterns have you observed as far as like what actually like clicks with audiences and what sort of doesn't? Like, have there been surprises? Have there been things you've noticed like, oh yeah, well, whenever we talk about identity politics, that pops, or if it's like, if it's a sketch thing, that pops, but if it's like if it's just like a monologue, those are a lot harder.
Oh, I think you nailed it with identity politics. That seems to be the stuff that's on everyone's mind. And it's a challenge there. There's the wokesters, if you will, like, they definitely open themselves up to a lot of being made fun of. But when you have so many people hopping on that, it could be tough to find, what's this new angle. And we often, I often get that where, people will sometimes comment and be like, wow, you're really making fun of the left a lot lately. And it's like, and I take that, I take that into consideration, because, what we're trying to do, we're trying to be funny and we're trying to be original. And if you take a figure like, say, Donald Trump, where every professional comedian is making fun of this guy, is taking the piss out of him. Every hobbyist online is taking the piss out of him. It only, like, you have to have a really creative way to take this guy on. And I think that's sort of a similar thing, like what with identity politics too. Like how are we going to take this on? So one of the ways, one of the last videos that did pretty well, it was about a service called Political Opinion Surrogates. So like if you're a straight white guy who's afraid to, have an opinion on any controversial subject, this service will, you can hire somebody of that protected class to say what your exact opinion is. But since it's coming out of their mouth, they are now allowed to say that. So I think issues of identity politics, free speech, I think those are some of the ones that are our biggest hits.
Have you, one of the things that's, I think, so hard for being like a principled classical liberal now is the ground that we have where we can be like, here's where we stand, is shrinking from it feels like it's shrinking from all sides. So everybody seems to be defined by the negation, by like what they're opposed to. And then you realize like, oh, I don't like, okay, just because you hate that too, but I don't like you very much. So please don't just like, you kind of take a knock at identity politics, and then some of the people that come alongside and say, yeah, you're like, no.
Right.
How have you dealt with that? How have you experienced that like the kind of, like how do you deal with the audience in terms of people that will come in and comments and sort of, it gets gross because it's the internet, and
right.
And so you're finding yourself forced into alignment with people that on many other issues you're like pretty opposed. Mm-hmm. I know I run into that all the time, just even in conversation. But
yeah, I'm happy to report that some of my favorite comments that we get are the ones that say, I love you guys. I don't agree with you on everything, but I like what you're doing. And I know that, you're doing it in good faith, no matter what you're doing, whether it's, making a joke or anything like that. It's being done in good faith. And I know that if I don't like this video, there's probably something down the line that I'm going to like. And it's crazy how rare that is, it's tough. And I see it also with like issues of like free speech issues, right? Where, you take free speech warriors, if you will, like Nat Hentoff, and what, the ACLU and what they used to be, where it's like principled people on the left, when it came to free speech, they will defend everybody's right to free speech, right? And how that has shifted so much over the years, where now free speech has become a right of center thing, where it should be a universal thing. Like this, if there's one thing we should all be able to agree on, it should be this thing. And I see people sometimes where they're put in this position where it's like they've lost their friends on the left, right? And the people who are saying like, hey, we're welcoming you over here to our side, they're like, but I'm not on your side. Like, I'm on your side for this really specific thing. But then, you put yourself in a position because it's like, well, how do you feel about criticizing both sides now? Because in a way, it's like, you run the risk of alienating everybody until you're just sort of an island to yourself. And I have a friend of mine who is in writing. He's written quite a bit where he calls out the right for not being free speech advocates. He makes those, he makes those call outs. And I'm like, damn, I wonder what's going to happen, because it's sort of, is he going to be invited to speak before, organizations and all that, if that organization happens to be on the right of the political spectrum? So I think I'm being vague. I kind of want to protect him, in a way. But it's a tough thing where, what do you do when the people being nice to you would otherwise be your enemy?
How do you think about your job or your mission at We the Internet in terms of persuasion? Because I've always seen myself as somebody that wants to get ideas I care about out there into the world to be persuasive, to be accessible to someone who's not already hardcore on my side on an issue, but is like, I didn't think of it that way. I mean, and part of that is just the experience I've had with the rap videos. So many times I get these messages, like, almost once a month still, where it's like, I never thought of this way. Like my film school, my first film school professor, Simon, had like a kind of revelatory experience from watching the videos, which is like the highlight of my life. And he was like a Stan Brakhage in experimental film, like Marxist kind of guy, not super into politics, but if he was kind of a Marxist. It feels harder now. It feels harder to find an audience that's gonna be open to something that maybe triggers them a little bit, or sort of rhymes with other things that they don't like those people. So, I mean, have you been feeling that? How do you, does it worry you? Like, how do you think about persuasion?
Yeah, I a couple of years ago, I wrote a piece for Cato Unbound, and they did like a comedy issue, and I think it was titled something like my comedy nightmare. And the nightmare that I have is, it was at a time where I was doing a lot of live speaking in front of mostly libertarian college kids, right? And the particular nightmare that I have, the fear that I have, is I go out there and I'm saying what I'm saying and nobody's laughing and everyone's just clapping, So it's just sort of that fear of, oh, am I just speaking, preaching to the choir? Are people only liking this because they see their ideas expressed?
So your comedy nightmare is all the late night shows' actual audiences now.
right. Exactly.
Just Wooting Clapter.
Yeah, but there's the key difference is I don't have that. I don't have their salary. So
right.
It would be much less of a nightmare, I guess. If,
yeah.
If I had those zeros at the end of the number on the check. So there's something there where it's like, how do you take on these issues without sounding like an activist? Without sound, and it's an ongoing thing. It really is. It's an ongoing thing, and I think sometimes what keeps me going is the idea of, even if I can get a little joke in there that ribs the side that I'm supposedly an ally with, that then that feels better. So one of the recent videos we released was a video called Chickenhawks with PTSD. So for those who don't know, apparently there's a few definitions of Chickenhawks, but the definition that I went with this are people who advocate for wars they will never fight in. So it's like the rah, let's go to war. I'm an able-bodied man, but I'm going to send other able-bodied men off to war while I sit back here. So this was all, these Chickenhawks and what they're going through. It's like war is hell for other people and putting themselves through it. And, for a lot of that, at least when I was in college, it was the Iraq War, and that a lot of people on the right were seemed to be pushing for. We forget that both Democrats and Republicans gave the president the authority to, have his way in the Mideast. But I remember seeing a lot of young conservative guys talking about, let's go to war. So naturally, the people that we're making fun of would be, on the right. So it's like, here's my opportunity where I may have done a video in the past that the right is like, I'm all for that. Screw these lefties. And now I'm able to do something where it's like, well, I'm messing with you now. So, there's an opportunity there to make that play when we can.
Yeah. I feel that way, like these days, especially with immigration issues. It's just I don't see how the libertarian position can be anything other than pretty as close to open borders as you can reasonably be. I mean, it's like the human movement around the planet is like a basic right. Not that you get to move around and own other people's stuff, but like I can walk from here to there. And the fact that somebody drew a line and said, now you're somewhere else. But man, does that triggers right wingers big time.
Yeah. And on that, and what I like is sort of, just take something like immigration, and it's like, it's such a complex issue and there's so many different sides of it. So how do we find the original way of taking it on? So I'm the son of an immigrant. My dad is from Argentina, and he came over in the 70s. He's been a citizen, I think maybe for like 10 years now or something like that. I am the product of, an immigrant's dream. I am a product of this man's American dream. And so I know that it's not like, someone needs to listen to my opinion on immigration just because of that. Like my argument should stand, on their own. But I remember, hearing people talk about how, Trump is a dictator, Trump is a fascist, Trump is doing all this, really horrible stuff. And when I hear that, what I'm hearing is you're telling immigrants to stay out. Like, don't come here, at least for the next however many years until we get this guy out, then it'll be safe to come here. And I think there's an opportunity for comedy there for sort of holding people to those arguments. It's like if he is such an awful person, then I don't think you want to just allow people to just, stream in and let him have his way with them. But that's, I guess it's my weird take on it.
What's the hardest, what was the hardest creative challenge to crack an idea and find a comedy angle in that you can, that pops to mind? I'm sure there's plenty over the years, but when you think like, man, I'm happy with where that came out, but at the start of it, I was just lost. And the first set of ideas that came to mind sucked, which is always the case. But I mean, like, especially so, like, I didn't think I'd make my way out. I think I was trapped in the dark place.
Yeah.
Unfunny hellscape.
Well, we have a video called ESL Students Learn New Gender Pronouns. So there's that video. And I had the idea for a while. And it was one of those.
What is an ESL student? Let's start there.
English as a second language. So people who do not speak English as a first language are coming and they're learning these new pronouns, these new gender pronouns in particular. And I had the idea for a while, and for some reason, like I could just never bring myself to start writing it. Like I was just, it's like, the idea is there, whatever, but I just don't have the energy for it. Maybe I just had other stuff on my mind. So I asked this other writer to write it, and he wrote a first draft and it sucked. And I gave notes and he wrote a second draft and it sucked. And I was like, ugh, is this thing ever going to happen? Then I was like, another buddy, I was like, can you take a look at this, man? Can you write it? And he wrote another draft and it sucked. So we're like, 3 or 4 drafts in and this thing sucks. And then I'm like, all right, I guess I'll write it. Let me rewrite. So then I rewrite it. And we would do this thing where we would often book out a shoot date, like even before the script was done. So
gives you a deadline. That's
I know. Yeah, it definitely gives you a deadline. a deadline where we're having, you know, however many crew members, and we need to find actors and all that. And so we had, I think, booked this shoot for a Friday, and it's Thursday, and I'm still working on this script. And I finally worked on it with my buddy Greg, my partner. He came up with a really good button, and it's like, okay, I guess the script is done, but we don't have an actress to play the lead. So
the day before the shoot.
The day before the shoot, because that's the best way to do this thing. So we're calling like every actor we know in New York to say, like, do you have a friend who could just, you know, who could do this? And I think we ended up casting the actress. I don't even think she auditioned. I think she just kind of showed up, and it was on the recommendation of a friend saying she's a real pro. She's awesome. And her name's Shelley Shenoy. She does a lot of voiceover work and stuff, and she's fantastic. And so we get there, and we shoot this sketch in this location, and we do this thing sometimes too, where we'll book multiple shoots on the same day. So that day, I think we shot like 24 pages of dialogue, which is insane.
You're giving me heartburn as a I came out of the pampered world where we would shoot 60 seconds in a day. Maybe the most I've shot in a day scripted is 5 pages of script in a day.
Right.
So
and I had roles in both of these things, and I'm terrible at memorizing lines. So that's on me.
Helpful.
Yeah. I'm, you know, real pro, Lou.
I wrote it, but I instantly forget it after I've printed out the third draft.
Yeah, exactly. What are words anyway? What is communication? Why is this needed? You know, so we shoot that, and we have no idea what's going to happen with any of this stuff. Greg edits it. We like it, but we end up making like a big cut and moving things around. And at this point, I don't even know what this is, man. Like, what is this? We did it. Okay, fine. And then we release it, and it blew up, and it did really well. And it blew up so much that I think it was ripped. Like somebody ripped, like stole it, and has like millions of views on their page and stuff. Which is the bane of our existence on social media. But that was, you know, that was one of those things where it's like every step of the way was a hassle. Every step of the way was just heartburn, and, you know, like, are we going to be able to do this thing? And then it turned out it worked. And that was, I guess, you know, it's one of the few ones that was that hard to get going that, you know, actually made some noise.
One of the things I think people don't appreciate, and I found this to be true even inside of like very creative people in creative firms and creative like networks, is how little the idea matters and how much the execution matters. Mm-hmm. Just talk to me about that and your experience with it. Just like the difference between, I think we all sort of obsess with the idea, with this sense that like, oh, I've got this idea, but then the difference between the same idea well executed and the same idea poorly executed, it might as well be two different ideas. Like the execution is everything. What's your experience of that? Like how have you learned that lesson?
Well, I recently had someone reach out who's been a fan, and they said something like, if you ever need any ideas, I got a lot of ideas. And it's like, you know, I think I probably took a minute of just like nodding my head on the other side of my computer screen, because I think you nailed it. It's like, no one is short for ideas. You know, we all have those ideas, but it's like, what can we do with it? You know, how can we turn that into something? And I think it's one of those things where anytime it's a collaborative effort, and you have, especially if you have bosses to please, you know, it's like, you know, what stays and what goes is often, you know, determined by the vision that the people you're working for have. You know, some ideas that we've had, I think, I thought would work better as a monologue, and probably didn't. It probably would have been better, scripted in like a more narrative sort of thing. And then others, probably would have been a better idea is just a tweet. Like, well, don't put all this money behind this hollow joke that might be that's not worth 30 seconds on it. But yeah, I mean, it comes out in performance, and as you know, when you're looking at stuff in the editing room, like, oh
Yeah.
no, that we didn't get that, or why didn't we get that? How did we miss this? Or
Yeah, the as a director, it's like I'm accustomed to, because to doing all the work in advance. That, like, coming to the table on the shoot day, there's a lot of decisions you're making on that day, and a lot of times that planning will get thrown out in different ways. The way you're blocked the scene, or will change, but you're sort of still standing on having done all that work, and so you kind of know the purpose, or where things need to go, and so it's like, all right, well, I had all this meticulous shots, but we're just going to scrap it and go handheld and move around and be fluid, and we'll do it a bunch of different times or whatever. But that, like, in an environment like where you're writing the day before. So now, do you tend to direct the videos too, or do you have somebody that directs, or tell me about just the production process for your stuff?
Yeah. So most of the time I'm not directing. I might have like a note here or there if something's happening, but I think a lot of that comes down to trust as well, where, if we have a shoot day and I'm working on other stuff, the idea of like popping in every now and then and being like, hey, could you do like, it's like, no, there's something happening here that, you need to be here from the start to finish. Like, you can't just pop in. It's sort of like all or nothing. So a few of the directors that I work with a lot is my partner, Greg Burke. He's directed a ton of stuff for us. And he has that director's mind where he's able to see the big picture. He has all these shots in mind, all this stuff lined up, which for me, I don't. Like, I could direct a sort of a locked off monologue or something like that, or offer some details, but to have an idea on how the camera moves and how we're going to be capturing things, I don't have that skill set, or at least not at a level where I'd be like, Greg, get out of here. I got this, kid, but I think it does come down to, a lot of trust. And I'm sure, there are people you work with behind the camera who are your go-tos, and you're like, I know that so-and-so is going to nail this, and I can get from them what I want. And I think that works with actors as well, being able to, have the confidence in them that they'll be able to give you what you need.
As you've worked with so many different people, what's been your experience of people who come in to your orbit to work on your stuff and see themselves as being of one mindset, and after working with you are like, have a conversion experience, or come to be more libertarian oriented, or more pro free market, or whatever, whatever you want to call it. All the labels are getting muddier and weirder by the day, so I kind of hate using any of them, right, left, all that stuff. But yeah, what's been your experience of people's own journeys philosophically who work with you or come to work with you on a more regular basis?
Yeah, it's one of those things where, while the material is definitely, can be controversial, or, on hot button issues, if you will, the discussion that happens, like, sort of in the green room, is sort of, I try not to get involved in that, like, as far as politics goes. It's sort of, I know why we're all here today. We're all here to work on this script, to nail it, to do well. So, there are opportunities where I remember we were shooting stuff with, we had a pretty young cast. So, like, people like sort of either right out of college and all that. And they were sitting around, and it was during the, way before the Democratic primaries. Right. And there were quite a few people there who were all about Bernie, and they were,
Yep.
very energetically, speaking about Bernie, and they said some stuff, and I'm sure I could have injected myself and been like, well, I happen to have a problem with X, Y, or Z. But at that point, it's sort of best to just let them, let them do the thing, stay out of it, and have a discussion. But when it comes to, sometimes people will hit me up afterwards, sort of in private to talk. And I actually had an actor who we work with, we worked with quite a bit, hit me up and asked if they could talk to me about something that was troubling them, and they were particularly kind of scared to talk about. And the way that they put it is that they're afraid to talk about this with any of their friends, that they don't know how they would be judged. And it was a really, we talked on the phone, and it was just about how with the street protests, they were a little troubled by Black Lives Matter protests being predominantly white in many instances, and we were wondering why. And wondering why that, why that is. And I said, well, I think that's it's a reasonable question to ask, and there's no reason why you should feel scared to have that conversation. And there are all manner of reasons why. Maybe it's taking place in a neighborhood that is not predominantly African American. So what but it was sort of that thing where I guess it's because I make the kind of stuff that I make, and I'm sort of outspoken in the way that I am, that they trusted that they can talk to me about this stuff, and that I wouldn't judge them, and I wouldn't be jumping down their throat. And I've found that a lot of the libertarians that I know and that I associate with are those kinds of people, where we are open to talk about stuff, and we're not going to jump down your throat and shame you. Not to say that there aren't libertarians that that are like that, but I've been very fortunate to have people where it's like, no, you can come to me, child. Come to me and tell me what's on your mind. Tell me what weird belief you have, and let's let's investigate.
I've been thinking we should legalize organ donation for money, but I know it's only legal in Iran, so I feel like I can't. It's like, no, we're with you, man. Markets and everything. But
like, are you Persian? Like, are you okay with me talking to you about this? Like,
yeah. It's when my wife and I we first bought a house in Austin. We moved into this little cul-de-sac, and Austin's a pretty crunchy town. And, so I got home from a trip, and Lisa said, I think some of the neighbors are kind of talking about us. Cause at the time, I went on Stossel for one of my videos, and she might've said like, oh yeah, he's in New York, he's going on John Stossel's show. And it got people talking like, who are these people that moved in? Like, what are they, weirdos? Like, what's going on? And so we had a meet your libertarian neighbors, brunch, and the difference between being able to have conversations with people in person, where you look them in the eyes, where you are sharing, you don't even have to be sharing much, but just you're physically sharing space. You have to deal with the physical presence.
Mm-hmm.
And every other form of trying to engage people on something where there's like contention and disagreement, I think it's like a category difference. It's like I think one of the biggest challenges that you face in being persuasive and not wanting to make like cheap shots and
mm-hmm.
pull the sort of Naomi Klein, like, dishonest, walk you through like kind of propaganda. If you don't want to make propaganda, you're kind of left in this hard spot if you're not going to engage people in person and have a real dialogue, because you're left trying to make an argument without any of those tools. So how do you think about that? I feel like comedy is one of the tools that's really useful for that.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you do comedy work, but like, why do you agree? I assume you agree, but assuming so, like, why does comedy work?
Well, I think I agree with you 100% that, as many gifts as social media has given us, and, the ability to communicate people all over the world, the fact that, during, lockdowns or like this, so we are able to talk, you're in Texas, I'm on the East Coast. There is a lot that we've given up as well about the important, just how important those human interactions are. And then one of the things that I found is, sort of like, the purpose of an internet argument isn't to win, it's to waste the other person's time. So it's like, how much time can I, how long can I keep you from living, from doing something, like that's sort of like what the purpose is. And what I've found is, this particularly happens if I know somebody, or I have a relationship with somebody online who says something that I find, maybe hurtful. Rather than calling them out in the public forum, I'll message them directly and just be like, hey, what do you mean by this? And being willing to offer myself up to, hey, if this is really important to you, let's go have coffee. Let's talk about it in the flesh, and obviously things are a little different now, but
Right.
but offering that. And what I often find is it's not that important to people. Right. And it's sort of like, when you start to see, especially when you have a family, when you have kids, the importance of the most important relationships that you have, that other stuff that you can let go a little bit. And I always try to remind myself that all the people I love and respect me. So it's like, cool, I'm doing well. I'm doing well on that front. And I think when it comes to comedy and the ability that, I think what comedy offers you is, there's something about the uncontrollable laughter that is just great, that can break through, so many walls. So if it's in person, at a live event, that's one thing. If you're able to make somebody laugh or giggle with a meme, with a one-liner or something like that, you've already broken through a little bit. And I think there's something too with comedy where the fact that I am a comedian, that all the people who know me, they know that I'm a comedian. There's always that chance that I'm just messing around, that I'm being silly, that I don't really mean this, which I think makes some things easier for other people to take. If they're like, he doesn't mean that, he doesn't like that, I could still, deal with him because there's no way he believes that. And so it's fun to sort of have that, that kind of trickster role, I guess, where you can kind of go, go either way on it. And when it comes to comedy, I just wish more and more people were willing to laugh, were willing to, make fun of themselves. And if I could talk about just for a second, there's a comedian named J.L. Coven. And JL is someone I've known for a really long time. I first met him when I was doing open mics in the Village. Like, he would drop in every now and then. He had been doing comedy a while, like even up to that point. He used to open for Patrice O'Neal, and he has a number of, I think he has like 6 comedy albums. And he's one of those guys who's been grinding for so long, and only recently has really blown up, because he does the best impression of Donald Trump ever. Like, it's just unbelievable, an incredible impression of Donald Trump. And I'm so happy that people are finally seeing his work. And recently he wrote a blog post about something that he's been experiencing, where he's a liberal, I believe a Democrat, and he's been seeing a lot of people tell him, you shouldn't make that joke. You should take this joke down. And a lot of it is coming from people on the left telling him, you should not make that joke. You should take this down. And it's troubling, because for him in comedy, it's like he would never tell someone, you shouldn't make that joke. You should take it down. he might criticize the joke and be like, hey, that kind of sucked, and like that. But that idea of taking it down never crosses his mind. And in his blog post, he writes about how a lot of that has to do with what social media has done. It's opened up, audiences that otherwise wouldn't be into your work. Now they can see your work. They're seeing it for the first time, and some of them, their response is more of a censorious one, which is to get rid of it. And it made me think about how I think one of the issues with comedy, especially in this cancel culture, if you will, is that as that social media has opened up the audience, it's also opened up the ability for people who aren't comedians to be comedians, at least on these platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and all that. So where comedy used to be a type of thing where we get to talk about stuff you're not able to talk about at the office. We get to be irreverent. We get to curse. We get to be raunchy. We get to do all that. You can't do that at the office. Now, a person who with an office job, with a corporate job, can be a little raunchy, can be a little they can be a little comedian, right? But the problem is those people, they suck, but those people have to answer to PR, to HR, human resources, right? And it's almost like because those people have to answer to HR, the real comedians now have to answer to HR. It's sort of like comedy has been brought under this umbrella of like a corporate safetyism, right? Where we are not, where we are making a hazardous, unsafe working environment for other people. And I think that's a real problem where it's like, no, comedians are supposed to mess you up. We're supposed to joke about things you're not supposed to joke about. And unfortunately, a lot of people, I think we've sort of been, the amazing siren. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it's just going by.
Well, you can't talk to anybody in New York without at least one siren.
That's right. And I feel like the rules are changing. And I think we're going to lose a lot of, I think we're losing something with that, but it leaves a lot of room for people to be like, you can't say that, take it down, or worst case, you will never work again because you didn't take it down or you said that.
Yeah, this is it's been very hard to think about. Like I think first and foremost, I'm like an econ geek. It's the thing that I always come back to, and hello, and I've generally avoided the kind of culture wars in my work because it's so divisive, and just because even the way I think about what a free society is all about is like, you don't need to have a culture war. You can just have pluralism. You can be over here believing what you want and living your life your way, and I can be over here doing what I want. And there's no, like, the war mentality is a zero-sum game. To be like, no, I have to censor myself and you have to censor yourself. There's no scarcity of airtime. Mm-hmm. But the way it does seem like this mentality, this censorious mentality, and I think you hit the nail on the head with calling it safetyism, this sense in which, like, there's been feature creep in the PTSD literature. Like, mm-hmm. It used to be like, no, you aren't, like, being triggered is a term used for people that have experienced actual trauma. Mm-hmm. And it's a thing that's a real thing. It's not, you made me uncomfortable, you triggered me. That's like, when I think about someone who's actually gone to war, hearing a kid say they're triggered because someone they don't like came to their campus, or someone holds an opinion they don't like on the internet. It's so out of proportion with what that means. It's like, no, I like, like my Uncle Tony was in Vietnam, and I always like conjure him, like, what would Big Tone say to this kid or this young adult at this point? And Big Tone would Big Tone would issue triggering experience number 2 in every case to that person. Like, oh, you think you're triggered? I'm going to give you some triggering. Here's the stuff I experienced in Nam. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, it's really tough. I'm sorry. I'm getting my internet connection is unstable. So I'm hopefully you guys are hearing me.
No, we're hearing you fine.
Tell my parents I love them. Tim Dillon is a great comedian, and he had a tweet kind of about this where it's like the same people, and I'm going to mess it up. But he said like the same people who consider it, an unsafe work environment to have a conservative on staff are totally okay with burning down buildings in a street, where it's like they don't feel safe with the conservative working, in the cubicle next to them or even remotely, but they're totally cool with, some arson, some explosions out in the street. And, we've come to that point where, speech is violence, silence is violence, but violence isn't violence. And I don't know what, I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know what to make of it either.
I'd like to believe that this is some form, people always like to talk about pendulum swings, because for whatever reason, there's something natural in binaries. It's left and right. It swings one direction and then another. It's like, well, it might be swinging in a lot of directions. It might be, you might get, you think it's out there and it comes and hits you from the side. But it does feel like we're in a moment that's prone towards some form of correction. And the thing that worries me almost as much as how far it's swinging out is that the sort of counter reaction isn't necessarily good either. Mm-hmm. Because, have you, what's your sense of that? Like, I mean, for comedy, it seems like it's weird because comedy always feels to me like it exists in two worlds. And I was talking to Andrew Heaton about this, and I'd love to get your take. I feel like the framework I always have for comedy is you have the comedy of the familiar and the comedy of the strange or the absurd. And the comedy of the familiar, like, is Sebastian Maniscalco or Jerry Seinfeld. It's like observational, comfortable. Like, I laugh at King of Queens because they are like my family. And then so it's familiar, and it's like it's comfort food comedy. And then the comedy of the strange, like in the weirdest, would be like Tim and Eric, but it's almost more about pace and syncopation and knocking you out of kilter. It's not necessarily tethered to reality so much as it is absurd and like itchy almost. Like it's like it's like a tickle. How do you think about like the different, because there's like absurdism versus that more observational comedy are like very different, and it seems like with stand-ups they tend to fall in these different categories. I'm sure there's more than one, more than these two, but these stand out to me. How do you does that resonate? How do you think about that? Where do you place yourself in this? Because these different frameworks, because sometimes I think you try so many different things. I think you're experimenting a lot.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for even saying that I might be in this world. That's good. That's awesome. Well, I recently, maybe like a year ago or something like that, started watching Buster Keaton. And man, if you want to see stuff that just holds up, that is surreal and just awe-inspiring, what that man is able to do with physical comedy, it's just incredible. And you made me start thinking about Kovacs. I think it's Ernie Kovacs, who used to do these very surreal specials in comedy that were really brilliant. And
Bernie Kovacs, right? Is it Bernie Kovacs?
Is it Ernie or Bernie?
I think it might be Bernie Kovacs. I'm Googling it, but it's, for some reason, all that comes up is Bernie COVID. It's like,
oh, God. Is he okay? I hope.
No, I don't think so.
But that would be such an unfortunate real name from somebody, Bernie Covid, especially in these times. Well, I think
Ernie Kovacs.
Ernie Kovacs. So, I think I almost feel like because of so much of the stuff that I try to work on is satirical, that you do, you want to take these ideas to their absurd limits. So that lends itself for that. But I think, like, especially with stand-up comedy, if you're going to be watching somebody for an hour, or at least it might just be the way that I perform, that you do want some reality, some real, touchstones there that you can relate. Okay, this guy's married, this guy has a kid, and all that. You bring up Sebastian Maniscalco, and that guy has me howling, watching him perform. The stuff he does with his dad, it's just incredible.
That sounds like that hits home for you especially.
Oh yeah. It's like I think anybody with an immigrant dad, like just watch him. But I think overall, I think you try to find how you can connect with people while being original and true to yourself. Like the stories that you're gonna tell, the more the realer they are for you, the realer they're going to be for people. Like Sebastian Maniscalco, he's a guy who plays a heightened version of himself, but the real version of himself is a dude who gets bothered by everything, and I see so much of myself in that. Like he has a story about going to this beautiful, like, luxurious hotel and seeing a guy, at check-in with, I think, flip-flops and one of those coolers, rolling that thing behind him. And he's like, he just can't wrap his mind around it. It's going to bother him for the rest of his life. There's a good chance that he'll be on his deathbed, and the last image in his mind will be this guy, with a terrible tattoo and all that. But I think it could be fun trying to, kind of go from one world to the other when in comedy. But I think it's a challenge no matter what you're doing. I don't know if that answered anything. We're just
well, no, I think it's it's interesting because I think there's like underlying patterns in a lot in creative works. I feel like, certainly in storytelling. I mean, right? It's like there's only like 7 story archetypes that you can basically slot virtually everything ever done into. It's like there's nothing new under the sun. So it's interesting to think about what if there is a set of archetypes in comedy. When I was directing commercials, I like my most of my work was like guy comedy, and it was partly because I worked at Spike TV, so I was always there was a lot of dad getting hit in the nuts by a baseball from the sun.
Right.
But the highlight for me, I grew up, I don't know about you, I grew up with the Three Stooges, which I'm very happy. I actually have some like really high quality copies of almost all of them, because they, if anything is on the cancel chopping block. I don't know how nobody's done a story yet about Three Stooges get canceled, because there's all kinds of I mean, they've got the horrible, like, stereotypical mammy characters galore. Everything about the Stooges is unacceptable today. But the comedy there, the timing of the physical comedy, that and like Benny Hill, like they left a big impression on me. And it just makes me think, like, why does that work? Like, when I revisit that stuff, and it's like, it still works. Like, what's under the surface of it that is clicking? You talk about like Buster Keaton, and it still holds up. Like, there's like a DNA underneath there that you can learn from if you can kind of crack it and find it and feel it out.
Yeah.
Do you feel the same way? I mean, do you feel like there's stuff patterns that you've kind of learned over time that even if you can't articulate them, they're there for you?
Well, I think, I was wondering, because I'm 38, and I'm like, who had probably like the biggest impact on me, like comedically.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where like whether like you have no choice in the matter sometimes, because it's all about when you were born and what you were exposed to. And I think about it and I'm like, man, like I would have to say Jim Carrey. Like Jim Carrey probably has like the biggest impact, but I'm not like a loud, sort of, kind of hysterical, character. Like I don't have these really big characters and like that, but yet there's a sensibility there where it's sort of like, I can look back on Jim Carrey stuff and it still holds up for me. Well, I guess it's a little different because I mean, obviously the Stooges are from so long ago. But yeah, it would be interesting to just like you said, like crack the DNA of that and say like, why does that work? Why does it work so well?
Yeah, there's I don't know. I mean, maybe there isn't. Maybe there's so many different. I think in stand-up in particular, since it's that singular person.
Yeah.
And it's like, does George Carlin fit into a broader type that you could group other people with that are like, Lenny Bruce and George Carlin and whatever. I mean, again, I'm not the ultimate connoisseur in this stuff, but
well, I remember there was always a sort of a debate when it comes to like Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy. Early on there was a debate, sort of like Bill Cosby and Richard Pryor. And I think Richard Pryor even admitted that when he kind of first started out, he was doing his Bill Cosby. Like he was sort of, doing that. And it wasn't until he broke free and started talking about his life and all the problems that he really, his stuff, a lot of his comedy is like in pain, it really, comes there. And then, comparing him and Eddie Murphy at the time, where even though they're, much different in age and also when they were, coming up, they were often compared to each other. And I think it was like on YouTube, there's a Dick Cavett interview with Eddie Murphy where Dick Cavett brings that up and sort of asks like a 20-year-old Eddie Murphy, the deal. And what I found was like Richard Pryor is one of my favorite stand-up comedians. Eddie Murphy is also one of my favorite stand-up comedians, but Eddie Murphy is a rock star. Like the way you watch him on stage, you're not watching Richard. Like, like Richard Pryor, he's a self-deprecating man that there's failure there. There's loss there. People feel comfortable heckling Richard Pryor, yelling out from the stands to try to get on the record. When you see Eddie Murphy, he's a rock star. You're not, he is in 100% control, even by the way he dresses. And there's there's a different attitude and muscle there and confidence that I think I wonder oh, who are the other rock star comedians? And I think maybe like Andrew Dice Clay would fall into that. Or Chris Rock has like a very powerful presence on stage. Dave Chappelle as well.
Yeah, there's it's just interesting there's something so interesting about the way that comedy and the way that comedians they occupy a place in like entertainment and celebrity that is kind of special because they're being themselves, and like you said, like in this heightened form. And that's not what that's not what acting does. Like you're playing a role. Like you're not being you, even though I think most actors in one level or another are kind of always bringing themselves to it. Like, with the rare exceptions, like the sort of Meryl Streep becomes anything she wants to be. But most of the time there's some level of kind of fit, like hand in glove fit with your type and with who you are and what your nature is. but it's one-to-one. Each comedian is totally singular. They exist alone as their, for what, when they really pop and they break through, like all the people you've mentioned, they don't have a comparable. It is like especially interesting to me that the nature of that. So many have come out of a place of pain. So Lou, do you have a place of pain you draw on for your comedy, or?
So a place of pain. Well, I definitely go dark. I go with a lot of, dark stuff, and probably fortunately for me, WTI has a certain aesthetic that won't allow me to go as dark as I would go. They're sort of saving me from my from myself. Yeah, and I think where it's funny, the examples you give of like, a guy getting hit in the nuts, I'm always thinking like, well, how can we go darker than that? Like not only is it hitting the nuts, but like what, how can we make it more messed up than even that? And I think I would say like sort of an example of other people who I look up to would be like the Kids in the Hall, where the Kids in the Hall,
one of my favorites of all time,
used to do some really messed up stuff. I have all their seasons that one of these days I'm gonna binge watch it, and it's sort of like pushing it and going as far as you can. I one of my first jobs out of college was I worked in a Thai fusion restaurant where at the time I had a ponytail. I don't know if you've ever had a ponytail. Have you ever gone that far?
No. I when I was surfing, there was a time, I have pictures where I had bleached tips, and
that's as far as you go.
Short hair and bleached tips, and looked like a real South Jersey, or I wouldn't go so far as to say a California dude. I was like the South Jersey simulacrum of a California dude.
Well, so I wrote, so that was like my first job. And then the job I got after that was I wrote erotic fiction for a living. So I saw an ad in Craigslist that said, "Would you like to write and edit erotic fiction?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So I applied, and I had to write an erotic fiction, story. So the first erotic fiction story I wrote, and I'm not going to get, don't worry, I'm not going to get too detailed, was about a young bloke who worked in a supermarket and was bagging groceries and was totally in love with the cashier named Loquacious. And I wrote this story, and I ended up getting this gig where for, Monday through Friday from 10 to 6, I would sit in a cubicle and write smut. And when you think about it, like, here I am, I'm writing, what's it, in college, you have expository writing, you're supposed to write persuasive essays, right? Like, I'm supposed to craft a story that's going to persuade someone in a sexual manner, which, I don't know who these dudes are that were, subscribing to these things, but they were there. You would have the regular stories, but but the biggest line, like the biggest sort of genre of stories, were incest stories, right? Which, crazy. It's insane, right? Like the
biggest
idea
line, meaning what? Like that was the most demand?
The most demanded stories were incest stories, right? Yeah, and really, I found out.
Is this ending with you being open your eyes to the Russian human trafficking mobs of New York? Like,
oh my God. There's an end to this. I swear. I'm trying to figure it out. Here I am. I'm being paid. I'm like a young kid. I'm like 22, 23, to write these stories. And if you look at it from like a literal level, this is horrific. I have a mother. I have aunts. This is horrific. But if you look at it through a comedic level, through, hey, this can be really funny. How can we work on this where not only is it, enticing to the reader, but making it totally funny. So, you bring in elements of like things that should have no sexual context whatsoever. Your mother's drapes, the amount of pillows she puts on a bed. So here I am, I'm having a ball making this shit up, and then having the extra, the hilarity that ensues, the idea that some guy's watching this and is actually, getting some arousal from it. So
was this the path to your quick firing, or
I only lasted a couple of months. Like after a while, I was like, I can't do this anymore, man. I had to like turn out something like either 10 original pages a day, or it was like 12 if like to rewrite other stories. It's just insane. And I didn't, like I said, I didn't have, like it was in comedy. I was kind of lazy. I didn't have that good of a work ethic. But that's sort of an example of, being able to sort of sublimate this really atrocious just idea with comedy and sort of make, and so in a way, like my 2 months there was like me basically telling the famous, the aristocrats joke, sort of like.
Right. No. So, well, I think in a way, what you've really said to sum up our conversation is that finding a way to make incest funny was the necessary precursor to doing libertarian comedy.
Dude, the LP needs me now, man. They really need me.
If there was ever a group of misfits that look like the product of continual incest, it might be the libertarians. If you get them all, put them in a room, it's like, uh-oh, the genetic pool here is something's off.
Something's gonna arrive.
As we come to a close, what's you've managed to bring together passions into a job, which is always awesome when you can pull it off, and you've got a family, you provide for them through making comedy content with philosophical message. Not an easy task. What is your advice for people who want to pursue a creative career? Skills, tools. What do you have to offer? What do you have to offer your younger self who's come out of school having pissed away $150,000 with dreams of being a poet, and now has to be confronted with a world that doesn't care about how they feel and needs to make it on their own in a big old city like New York? What's your advice?
Right. Well, one thing I would say is, obviously, don't expect anything to be given to you. Don't expect that stage time to be just given to you. Definitely don't expect the ideas you have to just, poof, one day, that idea is now a feature. Put the work in, never stop putting the work in, never stop writing, never stop creating, because what you want to have is when the opportunity presents itself, you want to have that body of work to say, well, this is what I have. This is what I've been working on. So, I joke about being in that comedy duo with Greg, and Greg really being a workhorse and having that director's mind and seeing the big picture. And I was really lucky to have that, because he brought a lot out of me, so that, after however many years of working together, we had, dozens of videos, some of them really high quality videos. We had dozens of scripts. We know what the process is like to rewrite. We know what it's like to take notes. We know what it's like to be pissed off at the notes that you're being given and think that you know what's actually supposed to be done, and then actually go into the manuscript, make those changes, and say, oh, you know what, that person was right. That artistic director, they were right. This is much better. So we know what it's like to be humbled but also to get well-earned success as well when something does hit. And if you're able to put that together, especially if you're young, especially if you have the time to set aside to work on that stuff, when the opportunity is there and someone says, show me what you got to have something to show them what you have. It's so funny you're saying this, because I actually have a young person in my life who's sort of asking for advice, and this is the kind of advice I'm trying to impart to him. It's like get that work done, get those materials out there, and when the chance is there, nail it. Kill it.
I mean, I think that's such great advice, and I think one of the things that my son is 15, and he's quite stoic for a 15-year-old. So he even laments of his generation being oversensitive. But I think something that these kids are gonna have to overcome is you've got to be comfortable with the discomfort.
Yeah.
Like so many of the things you've described and talked about in our conversation are putting you outside your comfort zone. They're making you, I think if you're going to endeavor to be creative, you've got to be prepared to feel like a failure on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Forever. And I know you're almost can never escape a sense of a kind of imposter syndrome. And being able to stay sane with that looming is, for me, one of the hardest things, because I'm always judging myself. Like, I'm not doing enough. This isn't working. Why don't I have this done and that done? And I've always wanted to do that, and I haven't done it yet. And you have to turn that into an engine of being productive, rather than just sort of a turning inward and shutting down and giving up.
One of so my son, he's 4 months old, so 15 just sounds insane. Like, that sounds like a eternity around. But one of my favorite things that we do is every night it's bath time. Then after bath time, get him in his pajamas and we read to him. So I do most of the reading. And the other night, we've been reading Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein, right? It's really brilliant stuff. And I'm not just saying it as a failed poet who, it's some really brilliant stuff. And man, the other night I was having, a similar thing of like that imposter syndrome, that thought of being an imposter, of not having more skills in certain areas and all that. And one of the poems that we read was a poem called, I think it was like it's orchestra, but like our orchestra or something like that. And the whole poem is about, if you don't have a drum, beat your belly. If you don't have a trumpet, play your nose. Play with what you got, And it really hit me. It hit close to home. And I think I am becoming a little bit more emotional as a dad. But it's like, damn, man, like, play what you got and play it well and play it as best as you can. And yeah, go for it.
Lou, thanks for taking the time. Keep doing the great work you're doing. It's exciting to see prolifically good work being out there. And I'll continue to be a fan and be pushing your stuff.
Thank you, brothers. I'm really honored that you sat down and had a talk with me. So I've been a fan of yours for a long time as well.
Thanks for listening to the Emergent Order Podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app. If you're interested in being a guest, shoot us an email at podcast@emergentorder.com. Our producer is Jesse Bennett. Thanks again, and speak to you next time.